Hello, my name is Annette Hall with Caribbean Community Live, and this is a story to tell. My guest today is Charles Mann, an extraordinary singer who I've had the pleasure of hearing a number of times. From jazz to swing to musical standards to classic love songs, Charles enlivens everything that he plays, and he's had an interesting life. This is the first segment of this interview. As I told you before, Charles is an extraordinary singer, and he's had quite the storied life. Welcome, Charles.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
I've had an opportunity to hear you sing and play. I was very impressed. I believe you've released 25 CDs over the course of a number of years, but tell me, where did this all begin? When did you know that music was your life?
Oh, when it began? Let's see, I was a very young kid, and I'd seen this picture of my dad playing saxophone, and dressed in his army fatigues playing with saxophone. I said, Dad, you play saxophone? He said, yeah, with the army band. I said, I want a saxophone. Get me a saxophone. Nah. I said, I want a saxophone. Dad played saxophone, I want a saxophone. Anyway, he was he didn't like that idea too much. So then when I kept persisting, he said, I tell you what, I'll take care of that. So one day he went out, he came back with his little thing, it was a clarinet. I said,
Not quite the saxophone.
Look, nothing sexy about a clarinet. I'm looking at this thing is long and it's skinny, and this looks like a saxophone to me. I'm going, he said, you got to play the clarinet. I said, why would I want to play the clarinet? I'm all 9 or 10 years old. I don't want to be carrying this thing. He said, well, when I was in the army band, the only instrument I knew how to play was the alto saxophone. I never learned to play the other instruments. But if you start out on the clarinet, you can learn how to play all the rest of them. Made a lot of sense to an adult, but to a kid, it didn't mean anything to me.
It wasn't what you wanted.
Not at all. So I was not interested. I just let it sit there. He said, it'll be there when you're ready for it. It just sat. And a couple of months later, my brother picked it up, and he played it for a little while. Then a few weeks later, the sisters was kind of playing around with it, but then it ended up back in the corner. I said, I still want a saxophone. He would point to that corner. And finally, I got over there. So I picked up that clarinet, and I played that clarinet through elementary school, middle school, and then high school. Always asking for a saxophone. But I was told he would never buy me a saxophone. You get a saxophone, you got to buy it yourself. But you can't buy it until after you learn how to play clarinet. So once I get out of high school, now I got to get a job. To do what? Buy me a saxophone.
Right.
But then when I go back and say, okay, I saved $500 and buy me a saxophone, well, you don't have enough money. You got to buy a good saxophone. You go buy a saxophone, and it costs more than that. So go raise some more money. Now look, this is years. Now unfortunately, I got very good on that clarinet. Very good. My hero at that time was Pete Fountain. And man, I used to stand in the mirror and hold that clarinet and play songs the same way I saw Pete Fountain play those songs on the Johnny Carson show. And sure enough, I could almost sight read with my eyes closed. I was playing the clarinet so well. But a year after I got out of high school, I raised enough money, told Dad I'm ready to buy that saxophone. He said, okay, now you can get the right one. When I bought the saxophone, it cost me $1,000. And
That's a lot of money.
I'll talk about it. But, and I had to pay for it myself. Anyway, bought that saxophone. I was 19 years old. Bought that saxophone, played that thing, played that thing, played that thing. 2 years later, I ended up working for CBS Records in New York City. And that's where it all began. And I played that for 10 years, and then I ended up working for Gamble and Huff, for Philly International, MFSB Orchestra, and played with my band, traveled all over the country. And so saxophone kind of, the clarinet was really the one that got me going.
Got it.
But it did make it possible for me to play the tenor, alto, soprano, sax, flute, oboe, bassoon, and all the woodwinds.
All from that clarinet?
From the clarinet.
So of course your father was right.
He was very much right, because the fingering in a clarinet, one octave is what's on the oboe, one octave is what's on the flute, and the other octave is what's on the saxophone. So if you learn the 3 different octaves in the clarinet, you can play all the fingering for the other instruments.
Got it. So
Okay.
you can play at this point pretty much any woodwind instrument.
No, we're talking about a long time ago now.
Ah.
At this point, I can't roller skate either, but I was a very good roller skater when I was 15 years old. So no, not at this point.
think
By the
you're
time I
being
was
modest.
21. By the time I was 21, I was playing 21 different instruments. That was my goal, to be able to sight read music for 21 different instruments by the time I was 21. And that happened. And at that time, I was also working for CBS Records in New York. Epic Records actually was the distributor. And so we signed a contract with Epic Records. The group that I had was out of Richmond, Virginia. And we were doing local commercials for a local recording studio. And then something caught the attention of a producer that ended up taking us to New York. And from there, the ball just started rolling. And so I've always been in the music business for quite a while. I'm a little bit more than 21 now.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So, it's been at it for a while.